For 400 years, the world had been connected. Ships moved between Egypt and Greece. Traders carried tin from the mountains of Afghanistan to the foundries of Cyprus. Kings wrote letters to each other in a shared diplomatic language. Wine flowed. Bronze gleamed. Cities grew. It was the closest thing the ancient world had ever seen to a global civilization. And then, in the span of 50 years, all of it disappeared. Not one city, not one kingdom. Every single major power on Earth gone. At almost exactly the same time, the Egyptian Empire, Mycenaean Greece, the Hittites, Ugarit, Babylon, crippled. Entire languages, entire writing systems erased from human memory for 3,000 years. No invasion force has ever been identified. No single catastrophe explains it. Archaeologists still argue about what happened, but the people who lived through it left one word behind, scratched into the last tablets before the fires came. They are here. This is the story of the year the world ended. To understand how much was lost, you have to understand what existed. The year is 1250 BC. If you stood on a hilltop outside the city of Ugarit, on what is now the coast of Syria, you would see one of the busiest ports on Earth. Ships from Cyprus unloaded copper ingots, each one shaped like an ox hide, stacked in the harbor by the thousand. Egyptian grain came in sealed jars marked with the pharaoh's cartouche. Aegean pottery, painted with octopuses and warriors, passed through customs houses where scribes recorded every transaction on wet clay. This wasn't a primitive world. This was a system. 5 great powers ran it. In Egypt, the pharaohs of the New Kingdom ruled a territory stretching from Nubia to the edge of modern Turkey. Their armies were professional. Their bureaucracy was terrifying in its detail. Every sack of grain in every village was counted. To the north, the Hittite Empire controlled most of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, from a mountain fortress called Hattusa, a city of stone lions and underground tunnels carved for a siege that hadn't yet come. Across the Aegean, the Mycenaean Greeks, the people of Agamemnon, of the legends that would one day become the Iliad, ruled from hilltop palaces at Mycenae, Tiryns, Pylos. Their warriors wore bronze from head to toe. Their scribes wrote in a script we now call Linear B. In Mesopotamia, the Assyrians and Babylonians held the rivers, and on the coast between them all, the trading cities of the Levant, Ugarit, Byblos, Tyre, grew rich on the movement of everything between everyone. The whole system ran on one metal, bronze. And bronze is an alliance. It requires copper, mined mostly on Cyprus, and it requires tin, which in that entire age came from almost nowhere. A few mines in Central Asia, a few in Cornwall at the far end of the known world. Tin had to travel thousands of miles before it met copper in a foundry and became the metal that made a sword, a plow, an empire. Cut the trade routes and you don't just lose luxury goods. You lose your weapons. You lose your tools. You lose your ability to farm, to fight, to rule. The late Bronze Age was a brilliant, beautiful, fragile thing. It was a house of cards the size of a continent, and somewhere around the year 1225 BC, something began to shake the table. It did not begin with armies. It began with the weather. Sediment cores pulled from the bottom of the Dead Sea, pollen samples from lake beds in Anatolia, tree rings from preserved timbers in Cyprus. Across all of them, climate scientists have found the same signal, a sudden, severe, prolonged drought that began around 1250 BC and did not let go for almost 100 years. Rainfall collapsed. Rivers that had fed cities for 1,000 years shrank to trickles. Crops failed across the eastern Mediterranean in the same decades, in the same pattern. We know what people wrote as it happened. A letter from the Hittite king to the Pharaoh of Egypt, preserved in clay, carries one desperate line. It is a matter of life or death. He was asking for grain. Enormous shipments of it. The great Hittite Empire, the superpower of the north, was starving. Ugarit's king wrote to Cyprus, a letter begging for food. Famine became a diplomatic language. Kings who had once exchanged gold and marriage alliances now exchanged pleas for wheat. And hungry populations do what hungry populations have always done. They move. Somewhere, and this is one of the great arguments in archaeology, somewhere in the northern Mediterranean, or the Aegean, or possibly further west, a population broke. Villages emptied, whole peoples took to the sea. The Egyptians saw them first. In the 9th year of the pharaoh Rameses III, around 1177 BC, a fleet appeared off the Nile Delta. Not a raiding party, a migration. Ships carrying warriors, but also women, children, oxen, wagons piled with belongings. They were not coming to loot, they were coming to stay. The Egyptians called them simply the Sea Peoples. To this day, we don't know for certain who they were. Some of the names carved into the temple walls at Medinet Habu, Peleset, Shekelesh, Denyen, Jeker, Weshesh may correspond to peoples later known in history. Some may be lost forever. They came from everywhere and nowhere. What the Egyptians knew was this: every kingdom the Sea Peoples had passed through on their way south had already been destroyed. The Hittite capital, Hattusa, burned. The great city of Ugarit burned. The coastal kingdoms of the Levant, one after another, burned. The Mycenaean palaces of Greece burned, abandoned, their populations scattered into the hills. Rameses III managed to stop them at the edge of Egypt. It is one of the last great military victories of the Bronze Age, carved in triumphant relief on a temple wall. But even as he celebrated, his own kingdom was cracking beneath his feet. Within a generation, Egypt too would be unrecognizable. We have a letter. It was found in the ruins of Ugarit, in the house of a man named Rapanu, a royal scribe. It was written on clay. It was never sent. The oven it was waiting in, an oven used to bake clay tablets hard before delivery, was destroyed in the fire that burned the city down. The tablet was baked anyway, baked by the fire that killed the kingdom. The letter is from the king of Ugarit. It is addressed to the king of Cyprus. It reads, in essence, "My father, behold, the enemy's ships have come. They have burned my cities and done evil things in my country. My troops are in the land of the Hittites. My ships are in the land of Luca. The country is abandoned to itself. May you know it. That letter is the last thing Ugarit ever wrote. The city fell within days, possibly within hours. It was never rebuilt. For 3,000 years, nothing lived there but grass and wind. And this is the pattern, repeated across the ancient world in a window of about 50 years. Hattusa, capital of the Hittite Empire, a fortress city built to survive a siege, abandoned. The royal archives left behind. The great stone gates open to the sky. No siege layer has ever been cleanly identified. The Hittites simply left or were taken. The Mycenaean palaces, Pylos, Tyrans, Mycenae itself, burned one after another. Linear B, the writing system used to record their palace economies, disappears from the archaeological record. No Greek will learn to write again for 400 years. The great city of Troy, destroyed around this same window for perhaps the final time. Cyprus, the copper heart of the ancient world, disrupted, its cities burned or abandoned. Along the coast from modern Turkey down through Lebanon and into Israel, archaeologists have identified a layer of ash and destruction so consistent, so widespread, that it has its own name. They call it the 1200 Destruction Horizon. 47 major cities, burned, abandoned, or both, in a window that by the standards of the ancient world is essentially overnight. And the people who survived? Populations collapsed. In some regions, by more than 75%. Cities of 10,000 shrank to villages of a few hundred. The sophisticated palace economies, with their scribes, their accountants, their long-distance traders, were gone. What replaced them was subsistence, small farms, no writing, no monuments, no trade. In Greece, this period that followed has a name, the Dark Age. It would last 400 years. An entire civilization forgot itself. When Greeks began writing again in the 8th century BC, they could no longer read Linear B. They did not remember that their own ancestors had built the palaces they now saw as ruins and believed had been built by giants. The Bronze Age world wasn't just destroyed, it was forgotten. Here is the mystery that has obsessed historians for over a century. No single cause explains what happened. Drought? The climate data is real, but civilizations have survived droughts before. The sea peoples? They destroyed cities, yes. But where did they come from? What made an entire population of refugees possible in the first place? They are a symptom, not a cause. Earthquakes? There is evidence of a storm of major earthquakes along the eastern Mediterranean fault lines in exactly this window. A rare clustering that may have hit city after city in the space of a generation. Real. But earthquakes alone don't end empires. Disease? Possible. Plausible. Almost impossible to prove from the evidence we have. Internal rebellion? Some cities show signs of being burned from the inside. The poor rising against the palace elites who had hoarded grain through the famine. A collapse of the trade networks? Absolutely. Once tin stopped arriving, bronze weapons could not be replaced. Armies weakened. Borders softened. Raiders found that the walls of the great kingdoms were no longer defended by the metal that had built them. The modern consensus, as close as historians come to consensus, is that it was all of these at once. A drought triggered famine. Famine triggered migration. Migration triggered war. War disrupted trade. Disrupted trade meant no bronze. No bronze meant no defense. Earthquakes hit cities already on the edge. Rebellions finished what invasions began. A cascade, each failure making the next one worse, each kingdom too busy saving itself to help the others. This has a name in modern complexity science. Systems collapse. When a network is deeply interconnected, when every part depends on every other part, it is incredibly efficient and incredibly fragile. A shock that one isolated kingdom could survive becomes unsurvivable when every kingdom is hit at once, and none can help any other. The Bronze Age didn't die because one thing went wrong. It died because everything went wrong, and it was all connected. The people of the Late Bronze Age did not know they were living in the Late Bronze Age. They thought they were living in a permanent world, a world of trade routes that had always existed, of kingdoms that had always ruled, of a system too large and too old to fail. Their children inherited ashes. And here is the part that should keep you up at night. Our world is more connected than theirs ever was. Our food comes from every continent. Our metals, our chips, our medicines move through supply chains that span the planet. Our economies are linked so tightly that a factory closing in one country raises prices in another within days. We are a Bronze Age network at a scale they could not have imagined. The historians who study the Late Bronze Age, the ones who have spent their lives walking through the ash layers of Ugarit, reading the unsent letters, counting the abandoned cities, almost all of them say the same thing. Eventually. It wasn't that the Bronze Age people were stupid. They weren't. It's that they didn't see it coming until it was already happening. And by the time the first cities burned, the system was already too broken to save the rest. 3,000 years ago, in a world of bronze and wheat and clay tablets, a civilization ended. The question isn't whether it could happen again. The question is whether we'd recognize the warning signs, or whether, like the scribe in Ugarit, we'd still be right